Shaun Tomson is a former world surfing champion and has been described as one of the greatest and most influential surfers of all time. He is an inductee in the U.S., Jewish, and South African Sports Halls of Fame. And Shaun is also a world-renowned leadership mentor, entrepreneur, environmentalist, and best-selling author. So today he is here to discuss his book, The Surfer and the Sage, a book that will literally change your life for the better. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome former world surfing champion and mentor, the one and the only Shaun Tomson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, that was a hell of a wind-up. I'm so stoked with that intro, and it's wonderful to be here. And thank you for the for the work that you're doing to activate and stimulate well-being and help people who are going through tough times.
Well, I think we've heard this saying before, we're all in it together, but you and I are literally here to truly, and ladies and gentlemen, you are about to be inspired like you've never been inspired before. And Shaun, I have read your book, The Surfer and the Sage, from cover to cover. And after reading your book, why are people today more interested in survival than finding their purpose and the power to improve their own personal lives?
The book was really stimulated by what I saw as a malaise in the society. Through COVID, I speak to lots of corporations, and generally my speaking engagements were on a face-to-face basis. Very large corporations, schools, university, churches, synagogues, all sorts of different groups asked me to speak to them about activating purpose to lead a better life. And through COVID, in order to keep the presentations a little bit more interactive, I would ask people, please send me one word that describes how you're feeling. And people would text me a word and it would magically come across the screen and form a word cloud. So the more frequent words were larger. So at a glance, you could see how the audience was feeling in the context of just one word. And these were very large corporations with tens of thousands of employees that were fully employed. I was working for one company that had the only treatment at the time for COVID. So these were employees that weren't going anywhere, but still the words that were coming across the screen, I called it a sad mindset: stress, anxiety, depression, and disconnection. And just before COVID, I had met my co-author, Noah Ben-Shia, and we decided to write a book, which was really a little perspective and a guide to help people move from darkness to the light, to move from a negative emotional state to a positive emotional state. So while we were writing the book, I was experiencing and hearing what people were saying during COVID, stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. And I said to Noah Ben-Shia, my co-author, he's a very well-known philosopher, Pulitzer-nominated writer, poet. I said, people are really suffering. Perhaps we can write into this and perhaps create a book that can just be an inspiration for people to move from a state of despair to a state of hope. So we constructed the book in 18 chapters, because 18 is a number that has great religious and spiritual significance. It means chai in Hebrew because every letter has a numeric. So 18 means life. And we wanted this book to be about life and to be a guide of how to have a better life, to move from negative emotion to positive. So we created 18 dualities. Actually 36 dualities, because it's 18 chapters. So how we can move from a state of anxiety to calm. And we did it in the context of surfing metaphor, because I was a top surfer, and waves in the ocean, I think, are a great metaphor for how we can just sort of get swept through life, and how when you look out at the ocean, you feel humbled and you feel connected to God, your God, whatever religious faith you might be. So this book is really a guide, and I'm so happy that you read it and you responded positively to it, because it's just there for inspiration to help people perhaps change that mindset.
Yeah, and you kick the book off with anxiety. So, and you state that anxiety is caused by a fear of a future occurrence. It could be failure, injury, or even death. And anxiety is a deep dread of failing. So, for example, what did surfing the bonsai pipeline teach you about controlling anxiety?
Well, just to give your listeners a little bit of background, the Banzai Pipeline is the most dangerous wave in the world. It's not the biggest, but it's the most dangerous. 18 people have died there. And for every surfer, that is our Mount Everest. It's not, like I say, there's huge waves that have been discovered in the last decade that are bigger, but none are dangerous because it breaks over a very shallow coral reef, breaks relatively close to the shore. So most people are killed by impact with that coral because the wave comes up out of 3,000 feet of water and hits this shallow coral reef of around about 6 foot deep. And the wave stands up vertically, and it's just very, very, very challenging. And as a young boy, for me, the ultimate test was to be able to go and ride and perhaps win at the Banzai Pipeline. I used to have a picture of the Banzai Pipeline right above my bed, and I'd look at it every night with both anticipation and dread. um, so when I started surfing it for the first time and I paddled out there, there was this tremendous state of anxiety. I was really anxious, both from a personal survival perspective and also wanting to put my mark on it and not failing, not wanting to fail at this benchmark that I'd set for myself. And whatever your aspirations or goals might be in life, we all have these aspirations that we set. And for many people, they don't really want to have a go, give it everything because they might fail, and then it's almost like this fear of failure is going to impact and affect your motivation and performance. And for me, I always had a different mindset. The very first surf competition I entered, there was three of us, and I came third. In my mind, I didn't come last. I came third, and I've always carried that with me through business and surfing, and now into my new life of trying to inspire people and activate purpose. That best isn't it. You don't have to be Steve Jobs or you don't have to be Bill Gates, but you know what is, and I have discovered after speaking to millions of people, better. Better is our better is our life objective. You don't have to be the best, and you can perhaps be the best in your field if you just try to be better. So, um, riding the pipeline, I just had to change that mindset and commit just to paddling over the edge, just to be better, not to be the best, to be better. And then ultimately, that led me to being the best guy and the number one guy. I think I was the youngest guy to win the major pro event at the Banzai Pipeline. It was called the Banzai Pipeline Masters, and I had my dad on the beach when I won it, which was just wonderful. He'd flown out from South Africa. So better, better, better.
I like that. And what I love about the book, The Surfer and the Sage, is how you intertwined your life story and all of the lessons that you learned. And those lessons are something, ladies and gentlemen, that we can all relate to. I couldn't stand on a surfboard to save my life, but by reading Shaun's book, by surfing the waves of life, you're going to start seeing things, well, in a much clearer picture. And Shaun, you wrote in your book, and I love this, and I'm going to have to make it as my wallpaper on my computer. And I love this quote: "A great surfer will wax their board with faith and drop doubt at the shore." So how has your faith framed your life?
Well, that's a great quote, and that's from Noah, who's a scholar of the Bible, and so faith has certainly been integral to my life. My belief in God and prayer. I'm Jewish, and whether you're Jewish or Christian or whatever religion or faith you have, uh, I think having faith in a greater power, having faith in one God is, I think it's just vitally important. And, as a surfer, uh, whether it's Moses, Jesus, this connectivity to the ocean and to the sea, whether it's walking on water, whether it's parting the Red Sea, the sea, whether the sea just has this magnetism for all of us. And yes, there's danger there. Yes, there's peril there. But I think in that fear comes this humility and this connectivity to nature, and to God. I had a wave once at the Banzai Pipeline. And this wasn't in a competitive situation. This was in a free surfing situation. So when I say free surfing, the best parts of surfing when you were a pro were when you were actually just out there pushing your own limits, uh, trying to be be as good as you could be. And so it was a very dangerous day. It was about 15 feet, which is maximum size for the Banzai Pipeline. I took off on this wave, and I took off in an incredibly dangerous position where people never ever take off. But I just happened to be there. This wave came to me, and I remember riding across this wave, and I rode inside the tube, which is the ultimate moment in surfing. It's when you're riding inside the spinning tunnel of water. It's like being uh, in the eye of a watery hurricane. And what happens, the wave implodes upon itself and it forms up this great pressure. And the only way that the pressure can be released is it blows out the side of the wave, and you get blown out with it, like you're getting blasted out of a cannon. And I was inside the spinning tunnel of water, and I was feeling this pressure build up, and it felt like time was expanded and the wave was moving in slow motion. But I knew this was the most dangerous wave I'd ever taken off on my life. I was shooting across coral that was about 4 foot deep. And as I got further and further inside the tube, inside the tunnel of the water, with this beautiful glass ceiling cascading over ahead of me, I looked ahead and I saw the ocean was getting shallower and shallower and shallower until the reef ahead of me was black. And I knew if I didn't make it across that portion where it was incredibly shallow and I wiped out, the wave would kill me. It's the only time in my life I thought I was going to die. And you know what I did? I went, please God, don't let me die. And the wave exploded and it shot me out like I'm shot out of a cannon. And I shot right over that dark path of death, right over onto the other side. And it was one of the greatest waves of my life. But I like to think that, not I like to think, I know when I did that, when I went, please God, don't let me die there. That's when you know about faith.
You actually put that story in this book. And as I was reading that exact story you just told all of us, I could visualize being on the board with you. I could visualize that dark 18 feet of black shadow, and you knowing it was the coral. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then, like you said, you just shot out the other side, and it's almost like there's glory. You made it to the other side, and I can't even imagine just the moment of maybe it was maybe a little bit of fear, but then all of a sudden, just that relief getting to the other side, a victory. It's exactly what it was. Even though you weren't in competition, it was a true victory that, wow, I made it, I did it, and he heard me.
Yeah, yeah. It's that, surfing gives you that feeling of absolute exhilaration when you balanced on that cusp of life and death. It's just like there's an amazing, my favorite poem is by this Irishman called W.B. Yeats. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seem waste of breath in balance with this life, this death. So, and it starts out, a lonely impulse of delight drove me to this tumult. So, this sensation uh, that surfers get and other athletes get, they call it being in a state of flow. But certainly when you have the element of danger involved, whether you're an F1 driver or you're high-speed skier. Um, it just sort of heightens that experience, and then it brings you, closer to your faith. It's so interesting. I've never really read an article or anyone writing about that moment when it's just life and death. What do you think in your mind? Like for me, I went back to prayer, I suppose, and faith. And my mom was a great believer in prayer. I can't remember whether I wrote about it in the book, and she'd say, God's like a good neighbor.
That's
Uh,
right.
when,
That's
when
exactly
you
what she said.
when you knock on his door, he's always there. He'll always open the door for you. So yeah, that came with
And I think that feeling,
that.
Shaun, it's a little bit of it's a miracle because you can't explain it. You know, you see what's ahead of you, you can see a possible danger, and then you kind of probably thought, how in the world did I make it through there? There should have been no way to make it through. But when there's a will, there's a way. But I believe that God still performs miracles today. Even in the side of a
Absolutely,
pipeline, God is there.
absolutely, and I think we need to. I think we need to open our hearts to these miracles and not just look at them as sort of like a cause and effect, or an effect and a cause. It's there for us, and I think that we've as a nation we've become really disconnected from one another. You have Republicans on one side of the valley, you have Democrats on the other, and you have this black chasm in between. And when I do my events and I do my speaking events, I just came back from El Salvador 2 days ago. I did a series down there for 1,000 students of this amazing school, and then for two big corporate events. And I talk to people about how words have got great power. Words have got great power to connect, and words have got great power to disconnect as well. And that our words are really important, and they are the precursor to our actions. And yes, we can draw amazing strength from whatever religious writings you are empowered to read and whatever you believe on. But ultimately, we have to make the choice and we have to make the decision. Um, and that's why I encourage everyone, and I talk about it in the book about writing your code. Writing what you believe in the context of 12 commitments. I will pray. I will have faith. Whatever you want to do, and I encourage all the people listening out there. If you want to create amazing connectivity as your family, sit around the dining room table, all of you, mom and dad, the children, if there's uncles and aunties and grandparents around, and all pull out a sheet of paper, all of you, and spend 15 minutes, write 12 lines, every line beginning with "I will." Write your code. Just write your commitments, write down what's next. Write down and think about, you heard a surfer talk about the next wave. Write down your next wave, and then one at a time, you stand up and you share your code. Read it out loud to the people. And you might be in an organization, you might be in a religious group, you might be a group of PTSD survivors, you might be in rehab. People use it in all sorts of different environments. But what happens is, yes, this is a powerful way of activating and finding your purpose, but it connects us together. And we realize that we are way more alike than we're different. It's not a Republican on one side of the valley and it's a Democrat on the other side of the valley. It's human beings together with the same values. We all want the same thing.
Now, Shaun, as I was reading your book, you brought up the code. And you also brought up the surfer's code. Is the code method and surfer's code, is it the same thing?
They're very, very closely aligned. The method is the same, but the surface code is really the origin. And to explain to your listeners um, and how powerful words can be, how powerful the ocean can be, and how powerful the minds of children can be, there's this connectivity. So many years ago, a friend phoned me up and said, "Your favorite surfing break in the world's facing an environmental challenge. I want you to help me solve this problem. It's a very big problem. It's a $30 million problem." He said, "And I'm going to give you $100 budget to help solve the problem." So $100 to solve a $30 million problem. He said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the local government officials, the state officials, the local water board down to the beach to tell them about the problem. And I'm going to bring a group of children, and I'm going to bring the media too. And I think we can create awareness of the problem through the kids, but you need to do something to inspire these 100 kids. So I went home and I thought, what can I do for $100 to inspire 100 kids? So I pulled out a sheet of paper, and in 15 minutes, I wrote 12 lines, every one beginning with "I will." I wrote down that the most important lessons that surfing had taught me about life. Not how to be the best surfer in the world or ride the biggest waves, but about character and camaraderie, honor, integrity, perseverance, resilience, faith, honor. And I started, the very first line is, "I will never turn my back on the ocean." So, that's just a metaphor. It can be meant in so many different ways. I mean, it can apply to religion and spirituality. It can apply to a love for the sea. And when I wrote that, I really thought of my father. My father was one of South Africa's greatest swimmers, was destined to go to the Olympics, and then a couple of years before was really badly attacked by a shark, nearly lost his arm. So his dreams were destroyed. But he took me and showed me how to swim and surf 50 yards, 100 yards away from where he'd had this terrible attack. So he never turned his back on the ocean or this great love. So all of the 12 lines had special meaning for me. And then I printed up a little card, a plastic card for the kids, cost me $100, and I gave them to the kids. So the kids loved the cards. They got very, very excited about them. And we created, I think, some really cool environmental consciousness amongst the kids, and the media liked the cards. And eventually the problem got solved. The environmental problem was solved. A bond was raised, but the cards just sort of kept on going. The cards sort of was like a wave, man. They just kept running. People would keep asking us for cards, asking me for cards. And my wife and I had a clothing company, so we started putting the cards, these little plastic cards with 12 lines on them, and that are called surface code, inside the pockets or the board shorts, the swimwear products. So these cards were just getting distributed out into sort of the world. And then people would ask me, come and speak at our conference or come and speak at our school. And then at one of the conferences, a guy came up to me and said, "Shaun, I think this would make a cool book." So we collaborated and wrote my first book. It was called Surface Code. So while the book was at the printer, I lost my beautiful 15-and-a-half-year-old son, Matthew. His name in Hebrew is a religious name. It means gift from God. And it destroyed me. And I put the book on hold. I told the publisher, I don't want to publish the book. And then after a few months, I thought, now I've got to bring the book out to honor my son. And I wrote an epilogue, and the book became popular when it was released. We launched it on the Today Show. It was super cool. It went to #1 on Amazon in its genre, and it was just a very simple, really special book. So this is how life can work, Ward, and I believe in miracles, man. Not I've got it wrong. Belief is generally something you don't see. Belief's inside you, but you don't really see it. But I've seen it. Um, so now I'm in the water, and I mentioned to you that mindset, the words have been stress, anxiety, depression, and disconnection. People have been disconnected, not just from each other, from faith, from hope, um, and I love to connect. I love to connect with people. Like you and I don't know each other. I feel like I know you now, but I
Oh,
love.
I'm the same way. After I got through with your book, I was like, I mean, literally for the rest of the day, after I finished it, that's all I could think about. And I even wrote my own 12 lines. Ladies and gentlemen, I did the exercise.
I
I
got
wrote
to.
my 12 lines.
I got to read it.
And
And I'm sure you got to show it to your audience. Will be stoked.
well, I tell you what, hold on one second here and let me pull it up real quick here. And here, I'm going to have to grab the other glasses so I can actually read these small prints on these computers here. So hold on one second, Shaun. I'm going to pull this up. And here we go. I actually named the file My 12 Lines. And yeah, so, and I actually wrote My Surfer's Code. That's what I wrote. And so these are, this is what I wrote. So I'm going to be open. I'm going to be transparent right here
Vulnerable.
with Shaun Tomson for all of you to hear. So these are my 12 lines. I will walk more by faith than by sight. I will be a better father. I will be a better husband. I will be a better friend. I will give my best to others. I will be more positive. I will move forward in faith and leave fear behind me. I will take all that concerns me to the Lord. I will keep hope in front of me at all times. And I will keep my momentum going even in a dry season. And I will know something good is always coming my way. And the last one, I will use all of my gifts, my talents, and abilities for others and to bring glory to the Lord. So those are my 12
That
I
is
will
so.
lines there, Shaun.
That is so. That is so. That is so awesome. And Ward, when I was listening, and I could hear your connectivity to God and to faith and to hope, and I'd hear every line. Every line falls into, like I said earlier, one of two. I will be better, and I'll help others be better. And your last line was all about helping others. So it's amazing that as people, if we can just realize how much more we have in common than differences. Okay, so now to continue with the story, and that was so beautiful, and I'm so thrilled and warm that you did that, and I'm hoping that your audience does the same thing because it's so empowering, it's cathartic, and there's this vulnerability and accountability when you read it to others. It's just, I'll be a better father. I mean, that's me too. That's what I want to. We all want to. We just want to be a better father. So now I'm sitting in the water, waiting for a wave, at the same place where I wrote the code Rincon about the environmental challenge. In the water, waiting for a wave at this great break, which is the problem's being solved. And a guy paddles up to me, said, "Shaun, I'm a principal at a local school in Santa Barbara, and we only have 80 students, high school. We'd love you to come and talk at our school about your new book." So two little old farmhouses. So I go down to the school and I've got my books and I gave some books out and I'm chatting to the kids about the book. And in the middle of my discussion to them, I have an idea and I say, I wrote Surface Code myself, 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. I wrote it in 15 minutes. What about all of you writing your own code? Same way, 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. I write it in 15 minutes and send it to me. I said to the headmaster, I said, "Is that okay?" And he said, "Sure." So I've given the students an assignment, 80 students, 12 lines. So about a week later, I get 1,000 lines of code back from the students. Now, you must remember a few months before I'd lost my beautiful son. It was a number of months before. My wife and I had lost our beautiful boy, and he played a dangerous game that he heard about at school called the choking game. All the kids wore school ties And we don't know whether it was peer pressure, but we do know that this sort of deadly game was going around the school, and it still goes around schools all over the United States, all over the world. Kids play this game with their school ties, and we lost our beautiful son. So he heard about it at school, um, and that was the influence, and he just made a bad choice. So the very first line of code I read from a young girl, she was 13. I will always be myself. And when I read that, I cried, man. And then, because this girl, she wasn't going to be victimized, she wasn't going to be bullied, she wasn't going to be pushed around by peer pressure, which is so deadly. She was going to be herself, and it was such a statement of power and conviction. And then I read all these other lines that these kids wrote. I thought, wow, there's really something here. So I immediately phoned up my co-author, Patrick Moser, who we wrote Surface Code together, who's a professor of French literature, just the greatest guy. And I said, hey, Patrick, we've got to write another book. And it's going to be a framework for positive decision making for teens. And we're going to call it The Code, The Power of I Will. And that was my second book. And that also we launched on the Today Show, became popular. Also, went to number one in the teen self-esteem category, which was just brilliant. But that was the start of people writing their codes, because I could see, wow, this is both a process of empowerment for self, and then it also connects people together, because when you read it, people see who you are. They see inside your heart, they see inside your soul. And now that's what I do with all sorts of groups, super large corporations and big university schools, super poor schools, PTSD survivors, anywhere where there's a group and they're interested in having me speak, I go along and I'll speak and I'll show people the code, and I say, this is open source code. Use it in any way you want. Use it, whatever you want to do with it to help people, use it. So families are doing it, the schools are doing it, and it is it's a very fulfilling path. But it came from surfing, it came from students, and it came from despair, and it's turned into hope, because our will is about hope, because it's not about yesterday, it's not about now, but it's about what's coming. So that's what I do.
And it's an action word. I will. You're making a commitment right then and there. You made a commitment on paper. It's kind of like what the Bible says in the Old Testament, write it upon the tablet. And as we write it down, there it is. But then I like the fact that you've always said, stand up and read it aloud. So, ladies and gentlemen, I read mine aloud to you. And those words are brought to life the moment they come out of our mouth. So there's a second commitment right there. And ladies and gentlemen, I highly recommend that you take time to write down those 12 lines, beginning with I will. But you have to get the book, The Surfer and the Sage. But Shaun, I've got to ask you, because there's so much into this book that literally will change, every page will change someone's life. And in your book, the light shines ahead. The words your son Matthew read to you 2 hours before he died. How has his words shaped your life since that fateful day?
Very much so. Those words have become a mantra to me. I mean, they have become core to my existence. So just to share with the listeners, about 2 hours before I lost my beautiful boy, I spoke to him over the phone. He was at school, at my old private school in South Africa, where the kids all wore school uniforms and they wore school ties. And I'd phoned up my wife. My wife was with him because he was just supposed to be there for the one semester. We wanted to just connect him with the homeland and with my sort of old school. And I phoned my wife, and he picked up the phone. He said, Dada, listen to this. And he read me this incredible essay, beautiful words. And I said, Matthew, wow, this is so great. where did you get this from? He said, no, I wrote it in my essay at school today. And I went, wow. And the words, the light shines ahead, really jumped out at me. So he wrote an essay about riding inside the tunnel of water, inside the tube. And that's what I was known for in surfing. And that was the wave I told you about a little bit earlier about Pipeline. So those words, I went, wow, these words are super cool. The light shines ahead. And then we lost our beautiful son. 2 hours later, I got the dreadful call from my wife. He played this game, and then I thought about those words. And then after I lost my son, I thought God had left me. I thought he'd deserted me, because I thought I'd been a good person. I always try to do the right thing and try to support my family, try to support my sport, try to help others. And I thought, how could you do this to me? How could I lose my boy? And then I'll tell you about a miracle. So my wife and I are in hospital because my wife was in a very, very bad way, and I didn't think she was going to make it. And we're in the hospital room, and my wife's lying in her bed, and her mom is there, I'm there, and a friend walks in. Now, this friend had also lost a son about a year before, and this friend had been to see a grief counselor, a woman who, a very spiritual woman, and he walked into the room, to the hospital room, and said, I have a message from Matthew. Now, you must remember, Matthew's name means gift from God in Hebrew. One bolt of lightning hit that hospital. One bolt of lightning hit that hospital and shook it to its foundation. Bang! And the window was open. It was an absolutely clear sky with not even one cloud. Not one cloud. Not one cloud, Ward. Bang! And that was like, and he said, Matthew's okay. Matthew's sorry. He made a mistake. And that was his message. And I looked around, and that was like that blinding bolt of light was like a sign to me. And I started going to my old synagogue, my old shul, where I had my bar mitzvah in South Africa. And if any of your listeners have ever been into a synagogue, every synagogue in the world is the same. You have the 5 books of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible. It's called the Torah, in the ark. And above the ark, you have a light. It's called Ner Tamid in Hebrew. And that's the light of everlasting faith. And I'd sit there in my old bar mitzvah, and I'd look up at the light, and I'd think about what Matthew wrote, the light shines ahead. And I think about that bolt of lightning that hit the hotel. And I knew God hadn't deserted me. He was there with me. And then the final affirmation for me was, I told you that the exhilaration that every surfer has, it's called being stoked. It's like a burning fire inside you. It makes you want to wake up early in the morning when it's freezing cold, and you want to paddle out into the darkness and try to find that next wave. But it had gone out. I had no desire to go surfing. And a friend of mine, a schoolmate, kept phoning me up. Oh, Shaun, I want to take you surfing. Shaun, I want to take you surfing. And I went, nah, I'm not going. I don't want to go surfing. And eventually I relented. I went, okay. He said, I'm going to take you to a break you've never surfed before. So we drive up the coast, and we're on the East Coast. So we walk down these steps to this beautiful break. And as we're walking down, the sun is rising over the Indian Ocean. It's actually looks like it's boiling up through the Indian Ocean, this beautiful red orb and these perfect waves. And I paddle out into the water, and I'm crying. And like the salt water is just washing my tears away. And I paddle out, and I wait, and I can feel Matthew's with me. I can feel God's with me too. And I swing around and I catch my first wave, and I stand up and I can feel that connectivity and it feels a bit better. And I paddle out and I get another wave and my tears get washed away, and I can feel Matthew's with me. And then I paddle up to my friend and I say, "So what's the name of this break?" He goes, "Sunrise." How about that? How about that?
Wow. Wow. That is, see, ladies and gentlemen, I told you you're going to be inspired, but you're listening, and I hope you're visualizing, because a lot of you watch my show on television, you listen to the replays on iTunes and Spotify, but miracles happen. And a lot of miracles happen to where, just like Shaun, you're by yourself. You may have a friend with you, but you're the one that's experiencing it. And what are those miracles for? Well, they're for you and for that person at that very time. But like Shaun is doing, he's sharing that miracle with all of us, because when we know those things happen, it's kind of like what Jesus said, if you don't believe in me, believe in the things that you've seen me do. Okay? And miracles are that way. Sometimes you just got to believe, oh my gosh, it happened, and you praise the Lord for it. And Shaun, I want to bring up something so important in your book that I want everybody to watch and everybody to listen. When you speak to young people, you tell them to think twice. Why are these two words so powerfully important for you to plant into their young hearts and minds?
Young people don't realize the gravity of the decision. They don't realize that a simple action can have tremendous repercussions. So there's this aspect of impulsivity, and there's this aspect of risk taking, and sort of trying not to sort of banish the risk from one's consciousness. And my specialty, like I like to think right now, is I help people find their true purpose. And for me, I believe writing your code can assist you in finding why you're here on this planet. You want to be better, you want to help others be better, but you want to make a commitment in your own way in the context of 12 lines, just for clarity, focus, connectivity, and accountability. But kids will be faced with a decision. The mom's not there, the dad's not there, the friend is not there, or the person who they think is their friend might be there. And every single drug overdose or every single death from drunken driving, homicide, it's all stems from that one decision. And I say to students, just in that moment, you're going to get a feeling. You'll have a feeling, you'll have an instinct, there'll be a moment of intuition, but just think twice. When it comes time to make a decision, just think twice. When a friend says to you, get into my car, and they've been drinking, just think twice. When someone offers you to smoke a cigarette or vape, smoke weed, take dope, whatever it is, just think twice, just stop. And many years ago, I remember reading a study on suicide victims. Well, not suicide victims, but people who had attempted suicide by trying to get off the Golden Gate Bridge. And they did a study, a longitudinal study of what happened to these people that tried to commit suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And only, I think it was about 5% tried again. So suicide, according to this hypothesis, and this is, my area of expertise is leadership and activating purpose, but suicide's a bad choice, and it's a choice that people don't really want to be successful at. So it's the same thing with dope, cigarette smoking, whatever it is. It starts from a choice. And just in that moment, just think twice. So I ask students, I say, it's not a prescription. This is my perspective. And I feel people respond better when you're not laying down a law. You're just going, here's my perspective on life, perspective of a dad that's lost a beautiful son who made a bad choice in that split decision, decided to play this game, perhaps pressure from other children at school. We'll never really know, but just think twice, think twice. And it's so simple. And I get them to shout it out. What you going to do? Think twice. What you going to do? Think twice. And I get them to shout out, I will equals power. I will equals power. So I did it with 1,000 kids a few days ago in El Salvador, and I do it all over the world. I do it all over the country, and I'm hoping that maybe there's one kid sitting there and, okay, I'll think twice. Or, okay, like kids will often write me afterwards, and they'll say, you can see that they're dealing with challenges, and they'll say, thanks for the hope. And then your life feels fulfilled. Thanks for the hope. I mean, if I can just spread some hope.
That's it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever thought about, can you make a difference? Every person can make a difference. Shaun Tomson has been making a difference in thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people's lives. So, ladies and gentlemen, ask yourself, do you focus on the positive or the negative? Do you live in joy or fear? Do you paddle in after a wipeout, or do you paddle back out? Do you take every good wave in life that comes your way, or do you share with others? So think about this. Nobody can free you until you free yourself. And there is an amazing chapter in Shaun's book, The Surfer and the Sage, even on forgiveness. And this is a book that I highly recommend every one of my viewers and every one of my listeners to read. So one of the things I want you to do on those 12 lines, I want you to add one, but I want you to put it at the top, that you will say, I will read this book. So many of you need to be freed from a wrong mindset and your outlook on life right now. See, look, there's a positive force heading your way. So I encourage all of you to go buy the book. It's on Amazon, The Surfer and the Sage, because the next wave in your life has been made just for you. And Shaun Tomson, I know you better, not just by reading your book, but I know you better now, and you are one amazing gentleman. I am so honored that you spent your time with us today.
Well, Ward, I can't tell you how great of a pleasure it's been. You have such a wonderful, warm outlook on life. And this is one of the best interviews I've ever had. I'm so stoked. And it's just been amazing to share hope and to share faith, and to share my my simple message that write your code, 12 lines. Every line begins with I will, and then share it with the people you love.
That's it. So here's the book, ladies and gentlemen, The Surfer and the Sage. And I can tell you one thing, it's time to hang 10 right now. So, Shaun, where can all of my viewers and listeners know more about you?
Well, you can go to my website, shauntomson.com. That's ShaunTomson. Or you can just connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm very active. You'll see some cool stuff there. I love, as you can see from the interview, I love to connect with people. So a lot of people connect up with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. And yes, I would welcome that. it's just been a very enlightening and warm show, and I really appreciate it, Ward.
Well,
You have a special way, and I can see that you have a special way with your audience, and inspiration and hope and faith. It's what we need more of in this world, and certainly that's what you do.
well,
With
I want to thank you for that. And we need more people like you, Shaun. And you have a personal invitation to come back to my show anytime you want. And ladies and gentlemen, again, head over to ShaunTomson.com. Find out where he's going to be. He could be coming to your area to speak. You need, again, you need to check out Shaun Tomson. But this book right here, I mean, this is one of the top picks for 2023. I can tell you that right now. I have read it from cover to cover. See all that? I've read all those pages. I've made pages of notes, just not only for myself, but of course for this interview. And Shaun, you're the man. But but again, thank you so much for the honor and the pleasure and your presence and your words for all of us today.
Thank you, Ward. Thank you, and happy holidays to everyone. It's a beautiful time coming up.
And you too, Shaun. And ladies and gentlemen, again, hey, stick around because we'll be right back with more.
The ocean has this elemental attraction to us all. Having ridden more waves than most on this planet, I've always felt that wave riding skills may help with a philosophy of riding life's waves. I've wondered whether there was a way to write a simple book, distilling what I've learned that can help others to find their inner power, to no longer feel powerless, and learn to ride that powerful wave rather than be swept away by it.
Tomorrow never arrives. Never. Now is the only place you can find your footing. And no one ever stood on a surfboard who didn't fall off. So when you fall off, get over it and get on and on again. Because in this brief life, on this brief journey, of all the things you can make in life, why not make a difference? And when the surfer and I met, it was the right time to make a difference together.